Hello and welcome. I'm Ricky with Watch Mojo, and today we're doing a deep dive into the world of Assassin's Creed. The Assassin's Creed franchise has been around since 2007 and is Ubisoft's most important and successful franchise. Each game has you playing as an assassin in an ancient power struggle against tyranny from different cultures, locations, and mythologies. But how accurate are the game's portrayals of historical events? Let's find out.
That's the question. One might surmise that the spirits that haunt us are simply our deepest fears.
Welcome to MojoPlays. Today, we're looking at 10 times Assassin's Creed was historically accurate.
Kausos was consumed by plague. We couldn't keep up with the bodies. It was spreading.
They get just as much stuff right as they get wrong. Blackbeard's death. Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
Nothing round this spot, sadly. But there's a few wrecks yonder that ain't been scoured by nothing but crabs and coral.
Arguably the most famous of all the pirates, Blackbeard roamed the high seas for barely 2 years in the end. But his mark on history has been clear, and he was one of Kenway's closest pirate allies throughout the events of Black Flag. Kenway's even there fighting the British alongside him during his final battle against them. Unfortunately for the heroes of the game, Blackbeard's fate was already sealed. Kenway tries his best, but he's fighting just as many sailors. Blackbeard is decapitated, just as he was in real life. However, the game cuts out the bit afterward where the British paraded his head around as a trophy.
No noise, Zanj.
The Sistine Chapel. Assassin's Creed 2.
Factorem celi et terrae, visibilium omnium et invisibilium.
It's one of the most famous works of art, not just in Italy, but in the entire world. It depicts various religious scenes, with the most recognizable being the creation of Adam fresco in the center. However, when Ezio visits the Sistine Chapel during Assassin's Creed 2, the ceiling is completely blank. So what gives?
Consubstantiarem patri, perquem omnia facta sunt.
Well, though we can't doubt that it was tempting for developers to forego historical accuracy and add the familiar paintings anyway, in the end, authenticity won out. Ezio visits the Vatican in 1499, 9 years before Michelangelo started work on the paintings, which is why you only see the earlier contributions done by other Renaissance artists. The Plague of Athens. Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
It's usually Phoebe who does the delivering. At least I'm alive. Though I can't say the same for my city.
Roughly midway through Odyssey, you'll return to Athens only to encounter a terrible plague. The city is being ravaged, the dead are piling up in the streets, and Ubisoft put a green filter on everything in case you didn't understand otherwise the people are sick. The Plague of Athens in 430 BC was very real, however.
Kausos was consumed by plague. We couldn't keep up with the bodies. It was spreading.
In-game, Hippocrates believed that the disease is being spread through fecal matter, which aligns with the theories that it was typhoid. But in real life, archaeologists still aren't sure exactly what the plague was. A typhoid outbreak is still a leading theory, but it has some flaws, and others believe it could have been an early bubonic plague outbreak or typhus. However, in the real world, Pericles died of the plague, while in-game, he's killed by Deimos.
Pericles!
Dickens, the Ghostbuster. Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Which is why I joined the Ghost Club.
In AC Syndicate, you'll be given a string of side missions for Charles Dickens, already nearing the end of his life in the 1860s and firmly established as one of Britain's foremost novelists. But Dickens enlists the services of the Fry twins in ghost busting, investigating supernatural occurrences throughout London. And in real life, Dickens did spend most of his later life debunking the paranormal, outing phony spirit mediums and haunted houses.
There are claims that a young man was caged in the attic, his only connection to the rest of the world a tiny hole in the door.
He was one of the most famous members of the Ghost Club and was a member upon its founding in 1862. The Ghost Club still exists and operates in much the same way, investigating and debunking frauds.
We are a beacon of reason in a world beguiled by superstition.
Penguins, Assassin's Creed Rogue. When we started seeing gameplay for Assassin's Creed Rogue, which moved into the Arctic and tackled the 7 Years' War between Britain and France, people were baffled to see penguins on the rocks. Penguins, of course, only live in the southern hemisphere. Did Ubisoft forget this? No. Instead, they decided to include another kind of flightless bird in their game, the great auk. Great auks were hunted by humans to extinction in the 1800s, but Rogue is set in the 1750s, when the birds were still very much alive. They're also not too closely related to penguins, despite looking so much like them. Today, you'll only see great auks in museums, old drawings, or in this game. Shooting Robespierre, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Run, sir! We'll hold this lot until reinforcements arrive!
You are a hero of France,
He's here!
mon ami.
Get him!
Few historical figures are as complex as Maximilien Robespierre, who, along with some others, led the First French Revolution in 1789 and established the First French Republic. He eventually became nicknamed the Tyrant, thanks to his policy of the Reign of Terror, where the revolutionaries executed large numbers of people.
But if not, they'll need to hole up somewhere nearby. They won't get very far with half the city turned out against Robespierre.
By 1794, however, Robespierre's time at the top was done. The Hôtel de Ville was stormed, and Robespierre was arrested and sentenced to death. At some point, however, he was shot in the jaw. Historians don't know who exactly shot him, giving Ubisoft the opportunity to make his assailant Elise Delasere.
Where is Germain?
I will never talk.
Then right.
Richard the Lionheart, Assassin's Creed.
A great favor indeed. Now our enemies will be that much stronger in their convictions. Fight that much harder.
This famous king is still venerated in England as one of the most popular kings the country has ever had. But his true position in history is a bit more contentious. Richard I didn't actually enjoy being in England at all, despite being born there, and almost entirely spoke French, hence his French accent in-game. He was either in France or crusading the Holy Land, which is where Altair encounters him.
Some of my best men were murdered by some of yours.
It was I who killed them, and for good reason. Hear me out.
Ubisoft portrays the king with far more nuance than popular history, however, showing that he could be cruel both to his subjects and enemies, but was a successful military leader nonetheless. Altair even saves him from a potential assassination attempt.
This is what you fight for? Peace? Do you see the contradiction?
Atlantis, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Time to take a dive.
Now, don't get us wrong, we're not saying that Atlantis is real with this one, but Ubisoft definitely did their research when it came to where to put Atlantis in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Atlantis was first mentioned by Plato in the 4th century BC, but Plato was never trying to convince anybody it was real. It was an allegory to warn about the dangers of hubris, as Atlantis is sunk by the gods in a devastating natural disaster as a form of punishment.
Greetings, Alexios. Welcome to Atlantis.
But there is a real story that could have inspired him. The Minoan eruption in roughly 1600 BC, which destroyed the advanced Minoan civilization on Crete. The eruption came from the volcano Thera, modern-day Santorini, and in Odyssey, Atlantis is underneath Thera's caldera.
This place is huge.
The Assassins, Assassin's Creed.
He'll teach you how to disregard everything the Masters taught us.
And how would you have done it?
I would not have drawn attention to us.
Though the franchise has all but abandoned its roots, at the beginning, it was inspired by the very real order of assassins that existed in the Holy Land during the Crusades. They operated much the same way as they do in-game, selecting powerful targets they viewed as their enemies and sending out agents to eliminate them throughout the Crusades. And Masyaf Castle really was their base for more than 200 years. The ruin also still exists in the modern-day city of Masyaf in Syria. The assassins themselves were eventually destroyed by sustained military action by the Mongol Empire in the late 13th century.
You did well to drive Robert from here. His force is broken. It shall be a long while before he troubles us again.
The Pyramids. Assassin's Creed Origins. You may be surprised to learn that there really are large pyramids located in Egypt, just like the game depicts. Alright, we're joking, but Origins' portrayal of the pyramids is extremely accurate to real life. In Bayek's time, the pyramids you see are brilliant white with golden tips, in stark contrast to how they appear today. But that's because when they were built 4,500 years ago, they were coated in white limestone and their points were covered in gold. Today, the pyramids are flat on the top, and Egyptologists believe that this is because the golden capstones, or pyramidia, have gone missing, though nobody knows how, when, or why. Stranger yet, Origins included a hidden chamber in the Great Pyramid, and after the game's release, such a chamber really was discovered.
You too, my child.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're looking at 30 of the most fascinating historical events recreated in Assassin's Creed. The Battle of Quiberon Bay, Assassin's Creed Rogue. While all of the European powers operating in the Americas at this time were committing their fair share of atrocities, in the world of Assassin's Creed, the British and Spanish are on the side of the Templars, while the French are allies with the Assassins. When Rogue takes you to the Templar side of the conflict, Shay spends a lot of his time helping the Royal Navy throughout the 7 Years' War in the North Atlantic. One optional engagement is the Battle of Quiberon Bay in 1759, in which the Royal Navy triumphed over France and ended France's time as a key naval power. This is the site of one of Rogue's legendary ship battles, as Shay sinks the Formidable. Louisiana Rebellion of 1768, Assassin's Creed III, Liberation.
This Spanish governor has placed so many restrictions on trade, even plantation owners are practically begging for an excuse to riot.
9 years on from Quiberon Bay, and French control throughout the Americas was waning. As part of the treaties of Fontainebleau in Paris, France's colonies in Louisiana were ceded to Spain. But the French Creoles in New Orleans didn't want to be part of the Spanish Empire, so they rebelled in 1768.
Look around, old man. Your hired hands will flee at the first sign of trouble.
Aye, but the lady's temper alone could take on an army.
In Liberation, we find out that the rebellion was organized by Aveline de Compré to create an opportunity to interrogate the Spanish governor, Antonio de Ulloa. Through de Ulloa, Aveline learns that the Templars are excavating Isu artifacts in Chichen Itza. The rebellion failed, but Aveline got what she wanted.
I will turn my back now and walk away. If you would like to keep your life, you will remove yourself from this continent, never to be seen again.
Thank you for your mess.
The Haitian Revolution, Assassin's Creed IV, Black Flag.
You know well the grounds of the governor's residence. Choose your moment. Do not get caught.
Black Flag's standalone DLC, Freedom Cry, took us to Haiti, which was always on the base game's map but largely inaccessible. It's set in the 1730s, 16 years before the successful Haitian Revolution began, but sees Adewale laying the seeds for rebellion as he works to free slaves in the French colony. Known as Saint-Domingue at the time, it was a leading producer of sugar made via brutal slave labor on plantations. It's a little anachronistic, but it shows the decades of violence and buildup that eventually led to the Haitian Revolution, which remains the most successful slave revolt in modern history.
But they're not even human. Without the discipline and guidance of their masters, they turn to rebellion. Murder. Like you.
Samhain, Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
It's hardly a disguise. Just a cloak and some bones.
Nonsense. You are the very spirit of the Mary Louvre.
This isn't one historical event, but a traditional pagan celebration which still exists today as Halloween. Beginning thousands of years ago, Samhain is a festival marking the beginning of winter, but is also associated with the supernatural, as doorways to the other world, the land of spirits, opened. In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Eivor goes to Gloucester and partakes in many traditional activities, including going trick-or-treating, known as guising.
Trick-or-treat! What business have you? Oh, the Mary Louis. Right. We're doing cakes instead of beer this year.
You also get to see old-fashioned jack-o'-lanterns made of turnips, not pumpkins. This is because pumpkins aren't native to the British Isles, so they weren't available to Gaelic and Celtic cultures at the time, which is unfortunate because pumpkins are much easier to carve. The arc culminates with another gruesome tradition, as the Elderman is burned alive in a wicker man. Honno-ji Incident, Assassin's Creed Shadows. We haven't seen this play out yet, but it's certainly going to be a key event in Assassin's Creed Shadows. One of the two leads is Yasuke, a samurai under Oda Nobunaga, known as the Great Unifier of Japan. Nobunaga ultimately died in 1582 after one of his most loyal servants. We're not sure whether Nobunaga will be a Templar leader or potentially Mitsuhide, but since Shadows takes place in the final years of the Sengoku period,
the daimyo, he's there.
Who will take the lead?
We can sneak in.
This is definitely going to be covered in the game. We'd even go as far to say it will be part of the game's climactic ending sequence.
You being allies then?
The Zanj Uprising, Assassin's Creed Mirage.
You were once imprisoned here.
Oh no, I have never been inside. In fact, I have never stood closer than this very place.
Slavery has existed for thousands of years and was utilized by the Abbasid Caliphate in the Middle East. In Mirage, Basim is soon tasked with freeing the leader of the Zanj rebellion, Ali ibn Muhammad, from Damascus Gate prison. Ali and his rebels might be useful to the assassin cause as they try to eradicate the Templars from Baghdad. Basim is skeptical of Ali, who questions whether Basim is truly free under the creed as he claims to be, or whether he is blindly following an ideology.
I will find who did this, and I will kill them all. You have my word.
Basim is right. Let him do this.
As we know from Valhalla, Basim will eventually start using the assassins for his own ends as he tries to reunite with his lover, whose consciousness is trapped in the Staff of Hermes.
And Basim, work quickly. You see what is at stake.
The Ghost Club, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Bloody Drood! I'll never finish it at this rate. Only Providence knows where those words are headed now.
A lot of famous faces were active in London in the 1860s. Charles Darwin, Florence Nightingale, Karl Marx, Arthur Conan Doyle, and of course, Charles Dickens. All of them need the Fry twins' help at one point or another, but Dickens has some of the most entertaining side missions of all.
Tell me, do you believe in ghosts? Not particularly.
He wants the Frys to help him debunk London's many hauntings, to find out what's really going bump in the night. This is all completely true. In real life, Dickens was a founding member of the Ghost Club, whose members exposed fraudulent psychics and phony hauntings, all of which were lucrative scams taking advantage of suspicious Victorians.
The Ghost Club's reputation has grown tremendously. We are a beacon of reason in a world beguiled by superstition.
The Siege of Acre, Assassin's Creed. This port city was fought over during the Crusades for hundreds of years and was besieged as recently as 1799 by the French. But we're talking about the 1189 to 1191 siege of Acre, which is the one affecting the city when Altair visits.
A little bird told me you'd be paying a visit.
Al-Muallim has ordered the execution of Garnier de Naplouse.
Though control of the city changed hands many times, at this point it was under the control of Saladin, though it's eventually occupied by Crusaders yet again before the game ends. You can see Crusader influence everywhere in the city. It even has a vast European cathedral, though the cathedral's Gothic architectural style is not historically accurate. Acre is the most blighted city in the entire game, with its citizens suffering greatly due to the war.
Rumors speak of atrocities committed within its walls. It seems the good doctor enjoys experimenting on innocent citizens.
The Peloponnesian War, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
A capable mistio such as yourself would be well compensated. Care to share in our upcoming victory against the Athenians?
The oldest set game in the series remains Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which takes us to the 5th century BC. Greece is not yet a unified country and is instead dominated by various city-states, namely Athens and Sparta. The two vie for control of the archipelago both on land and at sea, with Sparta generally having land dominance, while Athens was a naval power. Throughout Odyssey, Cassandra plays both sides.
I'll join you.
Good. We're glad to have your sword.
My spear is yours.
We'll make good use of it.
While she's Spartan by birth, she makes key allies in Athens throughout the game, and you can turn the tide of the war in whichever direction you choose. No region is permanently held for one side, however, giving you endless battles to fight. Execution of Louis XVI, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Bring forth the condemned.
The last king of France before the revolution is only a minor player in Unity, hardly seen until we arrive at his execution in 1793. Arnaud wants to use the king's execution as an opportunity to get the game's main villain, François Thomas Germain. He's unsuccessful in his assassination because Germain knows he's coming, but Germain does explain why he's been purging the Templar Order from within and why he killed de la Serre at the start of the game.
But the Order had become corrupt, clutching at power and privilege for their own sake.
But you could set it right. Is that it? All by killing the man in charge.
Louis also addresses the crowd on his way to the guillotine, and his last words are those given by the executioner's real-life account of the event in a letter.
Je suis innocent de tout ce dont on m'inculpe. Je souhaite que mon sang puisse cimenter le bonheur des Français.
The Great Fire of New York, Assassin's Creed 3. By the time Connor arrives in New York, the city has already been ravaged by the Great Fire of 1776. While we don't see the fire happen itself, its effects are far-reaching. Much of the lower west side of Manhattan was destroyed, making the situation for New Yorkers even worse considering they were, by this point, living under British occupation. Connor has his work cut out trying to help the people trying to live in the burned districts. Though people have theorized for hundreds of years that the fire was caused by arson, it's still unknown, and Ubisoft didn't decide to blame any particular side. Interestingly, you were supposed to see the fire happen originally, but it was too difficult for Ubisoft to pull off. The Cult of Reason, Assassin's Creed Unity. You may miss the significance of this if you're not already a fan of French Revolution history, but when Arnaud conducts his assassination mission in Notre Dame Cathedral early on in Unity, the cathedral is not in possession of the church. As part of the revolution, the Jacobin government at the time de-Christianized France, which led to the rise of the Cult of Reason, an extremist atheist religion sponsored by the National Convention that was given control of Notre Dame.
Credis etiam novi, et veteris testamenti.
The cathedral was vandalized and occupied by the cult, which eventually became so extreme that the government was forced to disavow it and create a new one, the Cult of the Supreme Being. Notre Dame is in this unfortunate condition during most of Unity.
Tout est en place.
Il a enfin entendu raison. Quelle est notre part?
The 7 Years' War, Assassin's Creed Rogue.
God had nothing to do with this.
This complex period in world history was covered by Assassin's Creed Rogue, with Shay and his fellow Templars aligned with the British this time, primarily fighting French ships on the high seas. The huge war had ramifications for the entire planet, and is what led to the French territories in Canada eventually coming under British control.
Ran them right out of their own den.
Well, I was looking for a new place to live.
It changed the balance of power forever, and from the war, the British became the strongest imperial force on Earth, largely ending the age in which Britain, France, Spain, and Portugal were all vying for control of the land and seas. And maybe Shay Cormac sinking all those French ships so he could upgrade his puckle guns was the reason the British won. This time. The Siege of Paris. Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
They scour the lands of England.
Ubisoft deemed this event so noteworthy that an entire DLC of Assassin's Creed Valhalla was built around it. In the year 885 AD, Vikings sailed along the River Seine to arrive at Paris, which was already a major city by this point. For nearly a year, Paris was besieged by the Viking invaders, with King Charles III, better known as Charles the Fat, leading the Franks in their defense. Whether the Vikings won or lost the siege depends on who you ask, and Valhalla seems to show their ultimate defeat in a different light. While they never did breach Paris truly, Charles the Fat eventually paid them off and sent them away to attack nearby Burgundy instead. What is the soul of man? Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. Assassin's Creed 3.
Ah, Connor! What a relief! You came!
On April 19, 1775, the American Revolutionary War officially broke out, with British and Patriot forces clashing in the Battle of Lexington and Concord. But during the previous night, the 18th, the colonial militias had been warned of the British approach by Paul Revere, who rode across Massachusetts to deliver the news.
Ah! You take the reins, I'll navigate. Quickly, Connor, get on the horse!
In the end, the Americans won and the war began. In Assassin's Creed 3, Connor is the one riding the horse through the towns, directed by Revere after the two had already met during the Boston Tea Party. Revere turned out to be an irritating backseat driver, however, with Connor doing all the hard work.
Connor, it's best you stay here and help our man John Parker hold the town. It'll give us time to spread the word.
Bombing raids. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. The London Blitz during World War II is a well-known part of history, but did you know that German forces carried out bombing raids in the First World War as well? The war broke out only 11 years after the Wright brothers' first successful flight, which meant most of these German raids were actually carried out by Zeppelins. In Assassin's Creed Syndicate, we see all this happen during the World War I side missions with Lydia Fry, who's enlisted to help in the war effort by Winston Churchill in 1916. Among other activities, she fights off those bombing raids and defends London from aerial attack. The Pazzi Conspiracy. Assassin's Creed 2.
Do you think me blind and deaf, son? I know all about your fight with Vieri di Pazzi last night, and then this little visit to Christina.
In the 15th century, Italy still hadn't been unified. Instead, the peninsula was made up of large, independent states and cities, including Florence, the heart of the Renaissance, which was controlled by the Medici family. The Medicis are always allied with the Auditores in Assassin's Creed, though the latter didn't actually exist, to the extent that Ezio seeks revenge against the Pazzis for conspiring to depose the Medicis.
Who? Francesco de Pazzi.
That, and the fact that the Pazzi conspirators were also to blame for the deaths of Ezio's father and brothers. In reality, the Pazzi conspirators were banished and practically erased from history after trying to publicly assassinate Lorenzo de' Medici. The 1715 Spanish treasure fleet. Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
And there I am, a man of quality, with 1,000 doubloons spilling from my pockets like drops of rain. I can see it.
In 1715, a huge treasure fleet left the Americas to send vast amounts of gold and silver to Spain. And loaded onto one of those ships, having been taken prisoner, was notorious pirate Edward Kenway and his future quartermaster Adewale.
I'm Edward. Much thanks for your aid back there.
Adewale.
The fleet was struck by a hurricane in the Caribbean Sea, with all the ships except one destroyed in the storm. In reality, this was a French ship, Le Griffon, while in Black Flag, the surviving ship is the one that becomes the Jackdaw. Edward later returns to the site of the wreckage to go diving. The remains of the treasure fleet are still some of the most valuable shipwrecks in the world centuries later.
All hands aft, lads! We're taking this one home!
The Thermidorian Reaction, Assassin's Creed Unity. The French Revolution brought big changes, including restructuring the months of the year and the hours of the day to all be in multiples of 10. That's what gives the Thermidorian Reaction its name. It was named after the new month it happened in, Thermidor, when Maximilien Robespierre was violently deposed. The Hôtel de Ville was stormed and somebody shot Robespierre in the jaw, Élise de la Serre, according to Ubisoft.
Then right.
He was then taken away and promptly executed, bringing the revolution into a new era, where the original Reign of Terror was replaced with the White Terror, and the Jacobin revolutionaries were now the targets of state violence instead of the perpetrators.
The temple. I should have known. I hope you enjoy revolutionary justice, monsieur.
The Battle of Thermopylae, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Persians come to make slaves of us all. I have a better idea.
Cassandra and Alexios are descendants of the great Spartan king Leonidas I, who famously led an army of 300 Spartans to defend Greece against the invading Persian army led by Xerxes. The Greeks were defeated by the Persians at the Battle of Thermopylae in the year 480 BC, with a few thousand Greek soldiers left. It wasn't actually 300.
Day was a day the Persians will never forget.
They retreated and Leonidas stayed to defend them, eventually losing the battle. It's this battle that Assassin's Creed Odyssey opens up with, and you actually play as Leonidas holding back Xerxes before you meet Cassandra or Alexios. Decades later, and they still wield Leonidas' broken spear.
This is big, Layla. Did you really think it's the spear?
This is the one. The book was almost right on top of it.
The 1755 Lisbon earthquake, Assassin's Creed Rogue. Portugal's capital city was practically destroyed by a debilitating earthquake in 1755 in a natural disaster that caused up to 50,000 deaths at the highest estimates. You experience the quake firsthand near the beginning of Assassin's Creed Rogue. It's triggered by Shay taking a piece of Eden from a vault beneath the city, and is the inciting incident that causes Shay to lead the assassins.
God had nothing to do with this.
He decides that no organization that allows so many lives to be lost just for the sake of another Isu relic is worth his time, and defects to the Templars. The Lisbon earthquake broke the streets apart and destroyed thousands of buildings, and is recreated in one of the franchise's best and most tragic platforming sections. The Battle of Chippenham, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. One of the major antagonists of AC Valhalla is Alfred of Wessex, better known as Alfred the Great, one of England's most famous kings. Though history generally remembers Alfred the Great positively, hence the name, Valhalla took a different perspective, and that shows particularly in its vision of the Battle of Chippenham.
Men of Wessex! They came from every house and hovel!
This was a major battle between the Anglo-Saxons and the invading Vikings, one in which the Vikings ended up winning, seizing control of the entire region for some time. Eivor and the Raven clan joined forces with the Great Heathen Army, which was the real army involved in the conflict, and take Wessex, though it was only set to be theirs for a few months.
The city is ours! Wessex will follow!
The Borgia Papacy, Assassin's Creed 2, and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
What better way to celebrate my victories than to join in the Brotherhood of Man?
One of the most notorious noble families to ever live, the Borgias have certainly been painted as villains by history, including when they appeared during the Ezio trilogy. Cesare Borgia is the main antagonist of Brotherhood, while his father Rodrigo takes control of the Vatican, becoming Pope Alexander VI.
Why did you not stop them? As if I could. It was not my decision to attack Monteriggione, it was yours!
Today, it's not clear how much about the Borgias is true and how much was slander invented by their rivals in European high society, but they did exist and also had control of Italy for a time. Being Spanish, they weren't particularly popular in Italy, and that's definitely something the games get right, since Ezio spends his time trying to oust them from power.
It's finished, Rodrigo. Lay down your arms, and I will make sure the end comes swiftly.
The Third Crusade, Assassin's Creed.
You know not the things in which you meddle, assassin.
Both the Assassin Brotherhood and the Knights Templar have their origins in the Crusades, despite both groups having existed for far longer according to the lore of later games, becoming the Hidden Ones and the Order of Ancients. But the very first game tackled the Crusades and their atrocities head-on, pitting Altair against many of the Holy Land's most important figures, such as Richard the Lionheart.
Vengeance, then? No, not vengeance. Justice.
And when you're not eavesdropping on conversations in one of the three main cities, you'll be riding through war-torn no man's land, just trying to get from one side to another without being taken out by a bloodthirsty crusader.
So be it. To arms, assassin!
The Plague of Athens, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
What's going on?
Kausos was consumed by plague. We couldn't keep up with the bodies. It was spreading. We had to intervene.
In the year 430 BC, and for a few years subsequently, Athens was struck by a devastating plague that killed tens of thousands of people. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you witness the horrors of the plague outbreak, complete with a great color filter on your screen, including the death of Athenian leader Pericles.
At least I'm alive. Though I can't say the same for my city.
But Assassin's Creed still can't shed light on one of history's biggest mysteries. What was the disease that caused the devastating plague? It may have been the Black Death, but it's also been theorized to have been everything else from measles to Ebola, and some medical evidence suggests it might have even been typhoid.
There is a blood fever. They say it's a curse and they need help from the gods.
Blackbeard's death, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
Nothing round this spot, sadly. But there's a few wrecks yonder that ain't been scoured by nothing but crabs and coral.
You'll encounter many of history's most notorious pirates throughout Black Flag, including Anne Bonny, Mary Read, Black Bart, and, of course, Blackbeard himself, perhaps the most infamous of all. But just like in real life, Blackbeard meets an untimely and grisly end. He was killed during a surprise attack planned by Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy, who pursued him relentlessly for some time. Upon his death, Blackbeard had his head cut off and taken as a trophy by Maynard, who planned to use it to claim a bounty. He's given more of a hero's death in Black Flag, since he's one of Kenway's allies, but it's still relatively true to life.
You'll be hanged and sun-dried just as them there were in Boston.
The king's called for a pardon.
The Ides of March, Assassin's Creed Origins.
The people love you, Caesar. You're a god.
The Senate will not bow so easily.
That parliament of clucking hens.
Another high-profile death that aimed to recreate history to the letter came in Assassin's Creed Origins, where Julius Caesar is murdered by his fellow Roman senators for trying to make himself the Emperor of Rome. Roman emperors did exist, of course, but not until after Caesar had been gone, which is why the other politicians didn't take kindly to him becoming a dictator.
If you ally with my sister, I will kill every last Roman in Alexandria.
You've already had plenty of encounters with Caesar by this point, including witnessing his affair with Cleopatra, but it was certainly a dramatic moment to see his demise. He was brutally stabbed to death by a dozen men in broad daylight who were supposedly members of the assassins in-game.
You too, my child.
Storming of the Bastille, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Where am I?
In hell.
The French Revolution officially began on July 14, 1789, still celebrated as Bastille Day every year in modern France. The Bastille, a large and oppressive prison in Paris, had stood for hundreds of years, starting life as a fortress. But while it was capable of repelling British invasions, it eventually fell to the revolutionaries, who stormed the prison and broke the prisoners out. And one of those prisoners was, of course, Arnaud Dorian, soon-to-be assassin.
What? Prison scrambled your brains, old man.
Drink took care of that a long time ago.
Arnaud didn't really exist, but the Bastille's storming remains one of the most important political moments in French history, leading to the establishment of the First French Republic and the advent of the Revolution.
Goodbye, this pond!
The Boston Tea Party, Assassin's Creed 3.
The Sons of Liberty get to send a message to England, and you rob William Johnson of his financing. Your village will be saved.
In 1773, American radicals launched a protest against the British colonial rulers, who had imposed higher taxes on tea that wasn't sold by the East India Company. Outraged by British taxation, the Sons of Liberty took large amounts of the East India Company's tea and dumped it in the Boston harbor.
We need to keep those bastards at bay while the tea's being dumped. Let me up.
In Assassin's Creed 3, this has the secondary aim of financially damaging the Templars, which is why it's Connor who has the honor of carrying the tea and tossing it into the ocean. It's still a huge part of Boston's history, and one of the first incidents in the successful American Revolution. Connor really hit the British where it hurts, right in the tea bags. Jack the Ripper's Killing Spree, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Stop! You want me, Jack? Come and kill me!
The most notorious serial killer in history, Jack the Ripper was famously never caught or held responsible for his violent crimes. Syndicate mostly takes place in the 1860s, which left room for an entire DLC set in the unforgiving winter of 1888 when the Ripper was at large. Evie Fry returns from abroad and is tasked with unmasking the Ripper by Aberlin when everybody believes her brother Jacob is responsible.
Only you know who the Ripper is, but you can't tell a living soul because it would destroy you and the assassins.
Of course, you can't set a game in Victorian London without getting Jack the Ripper in there somewhere, and dedicating a whole expansion gave these ghastly crimes the weight they deserve, saving them from becoming another of Syndicate's penny dreadful side missions.
Rest in peace now, Jack. You and your twisted acolytes.
It's always tricky when dealing with history because so many details can get lost, but Assassin's Creed over the years has done a phenomenal job at having players engage with some of history's most consequential moments and landmarks. Next up, we'll be taking a look at the most accurate assassinations and character portrayals from across the series.
You too, my child.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're looking at the most historically accurate deaths in Assassin's Creed games.
And what of you, Edward? Have you found the peace you seek?
The Pazzi Conspirators, Assassin's Creed 2.
There's Giuliano, Lorenzo's brother. Where is Francesco? There he is. Time to strike.
Sometimes, Assassin's Creed doesn't need to take any creative license with historical events, because the real history is so exciting. The Pazzi Conspiracy is one such case. It began when Lorenzo and Giuliano de' Medici were attacked by the conspirators, something the game reproduces on a mission where Ezio must protect Lorenzo in the aftermath. And in real life too, the conspirators responsible were ruthlessly hunted down and killed by mobs of Florentines loyal to the Medicis.
Your entire family dies by my sword!
Ezio doesn't need to kill all 80 of them, but he does track half a dozen of them across Tuscany. And when Ezio kills Francesco, he hangs his body from the Palazzo della Signoria, which the mobs did do to the conspirators in real life. Seabrand, Assassin's Creed. It's a little difficult to ascertain the historical accuracy of the first game. Not a lot of written records survive about the biggest figures of the day as they fought for control of the Holy Land. With that said, some are still more correct than others. Robert de Sade, for instance, actually died in 1193, not 1191 as the game depicts, while William of Montferrat died in Lebanon, not Syria. Seabrand, though, did die in 1191 and in the city of Acre.
I'll take care of this heathen myself!
Unfortunately, like many Crusaders, we don't know how he died. We actually don't know his first name either. But because of that, nobody can prove that he wasn't assassinated in Acre's port, not without a time machine anyway.
Seabrand's life is ended.
So it is. So it is. Marco Barbarigo, Assassin's Creed 2.
That's it.
Your pistola. The one you stopped the murderer with. It's as loud as those explosions. Time it right, and you'll walk out of here unnoticed.
Though the most bombastic assassination in Assassin's Creed 2 was flying into the palace to assassinate Carlo Grimaldi, not only did Da Vinci's flying machine almost definitely never work, but Grimaldi wasn't a real person. However, Ezio's other Venetian targets, the Barbarigo family, were real.
Welcome, my friends, to the grandest social event of the season. At peace or at war, in times of prosperity or paucity, Venezia will always have Carnival!
In-game, Ezio uses Barbarigo's brother Agostino to plot Marco's death so that he can take over as the Doge of Venice, which he did. Ezio is a noble himself, working in tandem with other Italian aristocrats to track down Marco at a private party and kill him. However, the dates are a little off. Barbarigo died in August, while in the game, his death takes place around Venice's Carnival, which ends on Mardi Gras.
No. It's too soon.
Robespierre, Assassin's Creed Unity. He's the only entry on our list not personally assassinated by the player, but he still encounters them during the dramatic coup that ousted him from power. Elise and Arno track him down in the Hotel de Ville with the rebels at the gate. And we see that, in Ubisoft's version of events, Elise is the one who shoots Robespierre in the jaw, and leaves him to the wolves.
We don't have much time. Where is Germain?
I will never talk.
In real life, he was shot in the jaw, and nursed the injury all night until his eventual execution the following day. We don't know exactly how it happened, but most historians believe the story of Robespierre's injury was actually self-inflicted in a failed attempt to avoid execution.
Seize him!
Cleopatra, Assassin's Creed Origins.
Through me, Memphis shines as rubies set in gold. Through me, Egypt triumphs!
Popular myth says that Cleopatra died after being bitten by an asp, a venomous snake native to Egypt. But this isn't true, and in fact, Cleopatra is generally believed to have taken her own life with poison. Other scholars, however, suspect that she was murdered, and as her final resting place has never been discovered, we have no way to know for sure.
All I have is that I am pushed further. One more attempt to snuff me out.
My queen, rest and remember
I do not need rest.
In Origins, Aya, angered at Cleopatra betraying the people of Egypt in favor of Rome, persuades Cleopatra to end it all, or Aya will return and finish the job herself. We don't see the moment it happens, and it's all implication, but with the context of Cleopatra's imminent death, it's clear what Aya means.
Everything for which we have worked for so long is now ours. We have defeated our enemies.
Al-Mutawakkil, Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Out, all of you. I am to meet with them alone.
Father, let me stay.
Take him.
In 861, the Caliph Al-Mutawakkil was murdered by his own guards as part of a long plot to oust him in favor of his oldest son after he angered the powerful military commanders he'd come to rely on. In Mirage, the Caliph is holding an Isu artifact for the Order of the Ancients.
Basim!
And Basim sneaks into the Winter Palace in Anbar to steal it. In the struggle, Nahal assassinates Caliph and his second and favorite son walks in on the scene. Though no thief was involved with the assassination in real life, the instability that follows the Caliph's assassination drives much of Mirage.
Run!
Hell, wait! Father! Get that boy!
Charles Lee, Assassin's Creed 3.
You put us down, we rise again. You end one plot, we forge another. You try so hard, but it always ends the same.
After decades of conflict, Connor finally tracks down Charles Lee, the last Templar on his list. He pursues him through Boston as Lee tries to leave and the two engage in an infamous chase. until Lee ultimately escapes and then goes all the way to Philadelphia. If you don't know the details of how and where Charles Lee actually died, you may have thought that Lee, gravely wounded, going all the way to Philly just for Connor to kill him in a bar was strange. But it's because Lee, of course, did not die in Boston, but during a visit to Philadelphia, hence the long pursuit. He wasn't assassinated though, instead dying of a fever. Julius Caesar, Assassin's Creed Origins.
Out, all. You will each be sent for when our congress is concluded. I wish to hear both Ptolemy's side of the story.
Before going for Cleopatra, Aya has a different famous face on her list. She arrives in Rome after it's become clear that Caesar is being manipulated by the Order of the Ancients, led by Flavius and Septimus. In disguise, she sneaks into the Roman Senate and observes Caesar making a speech to his fellow Romans. Only when Aya steps out of the shadows and assassinates him do the other senators join in, including Brutus, as we find out that the senators responsible were some of the first members of the Hidden Ones. This is all relatively accurate to how the Ides of March played out in real life.
The tyrant is dead! You are free now!
Bartholomew Roberts, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
I do. How can I not be impressed by the attention you pay? May the best that we do sing praises of the second.
Following Roberts' brutal betrayal of Edward, he ends up being one of the last targets in the game. Edward pursues him to West Africa again when Roberts flees at the last minute. Edward boards the Jackdaw and begins to chase the royal fortune with Roberts on board, eventually getting near enough to enter open conflict.
We're ready, sir! Fire!
He boards the royal fortune and assassinates Roberts, who asks him as his dying wish to bury him at sea to stop the Templars from finding his body.
A merry life and a short one, as promised. How well I know myself.
This is all very true. Roberts did die during a sea battle off the coast of Africa, and did wish to be buried at sea, which he was.
For what's peace but a confusion between two wars?
Oh, you're a stoic then. But perhaps I was wrong about you.
John Pitcairn, Assassin's Creed 3.
I'll be damned. He did it.
The Battle of Bunker Hill is one of the most infamous missions in the series for its tedious optional objectives, one of which being to air assassinate the British leader, John Pitcairn, without being detected. By carefully maneuvering through the enemy camp, this is relatively simple, but requires you to use one specific platforming route to reach Pitcairn on his horse. In real life, Pitcairn did die in battle at Bunker Hill, though he wasn't stabbed by someone jumping from a tree. He was shot and killed in the battle's trenches while leading his men, rather than standing back and sending them to their deaths. But you can shoot him if you like, you just won't get full synchronization if you do.
You wield your blade like a man, but your mouth like a child. And more will die now. Because of that!
Let us know in the comments which Assassin's Creed events had you picking up a history book.
We are a beacon of reason in a world beguiled by superstition.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're looking at characters where Ubisoft didn't need to bend the truth to make them exciting.
Hey, it's not the machine's fault. It's mine. I checked and rechecked my blueprints. It's just impossible. I don't know how to extend the flight.
Queen Victoria, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Your Majesty, I apologize.
The cake is particularly good.
enjoy the ball?
She only appears in Syndicate very briefly, in the final sequence and during the post-game missions, but being Her Majesty Queen Victoria, she was very memorable nonetheless. In 1868, when the game is set, she was 49, wearing the black mourning clothes she wore for the rest of her life after Prince Albert's death in 1861. She's perhaps more amenable than you'd expect, offering Evie Fry some cake and then enlisting both twins to help her on some clandestine missions to save Parliament. She also knights both Frys and Henry Green, only to be asked by Evie to abandon the ruthless colonialism of the British Empire at the end.
I understand and respect your position. Bound as you are by your creed. You will indulge me one final time and receive these gifts.
Blackbeard, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
If a man plays the fool, then it's only fools he'll persuade, but appear to be the devil.
It's always difficult to ascertain any facts about the golden age of piracy. Nearly all of what we know about these famed figures comes from the book A General History of the Pirates. It was written anonymously, but it's widely believed to have been written by Daniel Defoe, though nobody knows for sure. Black Flag drew considerably from this book and what other sources are available, and paints one of the most remarkably accurate pictures of its pirates, including the most famous, Blackbeard. In real life, his flag did look like a skeleton stabbing hearts with a spear, and he did light his beard on fire and was killed in a dramatic naval battle off the coast of North Carolina.
And I would profit better by using your organs for chum and your bones for char.
King Louis XVI, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Peuple, je meurs innocent. Messieurs, je suis innocent de tout ce dont on m'inculpe.
Another monarch, Louis XVI, is barely in Unity at all. But Unity takes more liberties with its historical figures than most of the games, so by appearing in only one scene, they manage to avoid disputing anything too seriously. Arno's trying to assassinate Germain at Louis's execution, which doesn't go well, but we do get to see the execution play out. From what we know of the event, the king did make that exact speech as he approached the guillotine, attesting to his innocence. In a rare case for Unity, they also gave his speech entirely in French, as it was originally delivered, instead of translating it into English and having it read by a Canadian voice actor trying to do a British accent.
I must take my leave. Good day to you. Kill him.
Alfred the Great, Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Do what you must, but treat him with care.
One of England's most popular kings, Alfred is renowned for freeing London from Viking rule and reforming many parts of English life, including bringing sweeping changes to education and literacy. It was under his direction that important books were translated into English instead of Latin, meaning that ordinary people could read them. In Valhalla, while Alfred has inherited control of the Order, he despises it and uses Eivor to eradicate its presence in England. When they meet for the final time, it's in Athenry, where Alfred really did hide while planning his successful defeat of the great heathen army in 878. He definitely wasn't commanding an ancient conspiracy in real life, but the game effectively conveys his intelligence and mind for strategy.
The Order wanted me dead. I had to be careful.
Benjamin Franklin, Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed Rogue.
Well, almanac pages. Well, not quite. It's a treatise, actually.
While we're sure that in real life, Ben Franklin wasn't constantly losing the pages of his almanacs and begging strangers in the street to chase them down for him, other parts of his character are true to life. One of the most bizarre, historically accurate moments is when Franklin tells Haytham Kenway about his treatise on the benefits of taking an older woman to bed, which really does exist. It's called Advice to a Friend on Choosing a Mistress, and began as a letter, but was eventually published in collections of Franklin's correspondence and, controversially, censored in 19th century America. He actually wrote many not safe for work essays, including a comedic one about farting called Fart Proudly.
Is there anything I can do for you to repay you for this kindness?
Julius Caesar, Assassin's Creed Origins.
You will each be sent for when our Congress is concluded. I wish to hear both Ptolemy's side of the story.
Like Alfred the Great, we're sure that in real life, Caesar wasn't being manipulated behind the scenes by an ancient secret society obsessed with opening a magical door. But the likeness in-game is very good according to busts and sculptures of Caesar from the time, as is his eventual assassination at the hands of Rome's senators. Though he was a great military leader who formed a key alliance with Cleopatra, he was eventually ousted and killed on the Ides of March. The senators, led by Brutus and Cassius, feared that Caesar would go even more power-mad after being named dictator for life, so they killed him.
She will never fall to you or your kind.
Freedom is not given, Caesar.
Bartholomew Roberts, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
Every mechanism that gives this device its light is a true and physical thing. Ancient, yes.
Another pirate, Bartholomew Roberts, is also represented relatively accurately. Better known today as Black Bart, Ubisoft resisted the urge to call him this in-game, as it would have been an anachronism since he was never called that in his lifetime. Roberts was one of the most successful pirates in history, taking 400 ships and creating the Pirate Code. In Black Flag, he dies at Edward's hand after being pursued in a ship chase, which is also accurate. And he did request to be buried at sea. In the game, this is so the Templars can't use his body for research since he's a sage, but it did happen in reality too, and his body has never been found.
Oh, you're a stoic then. But perhaps I was wrong about you.
Leonardo da Vinci, Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
Oh, Ezio Auditore! I didn't expect to see you again.
Ezio meets Leonardo early in Assassin's Creed 2 as his mother is buying some of Leonardo's paintings. Already, he's becoming renowned as a Renaissance artist and thinker in Florence. But this culminates in the following game when he's enlisted by Cesare Borgia to build war machines. It is true that Da Vinci worked for Cesare as his military architect, but not that he was forced to do this. By all accounts, Da Vinci did this willingly. The machines you destroy in Brotherhood, like the tank and flying machine, were never functional in real life, but they are based on real designs Da Vinci made during his lifetime.
Ezio, what are you not telling me?
What else are you working on?
Socrates, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Be slow to fall into friendship, but once you do, continue firm and constant.
Was Socrates as annoying in real life as he is in Odyssey? Yes, actually. He's a fun but infuriating friend of Cassandra and or Alexios, frequently showing up to challenge people to think a little more about why they do the things they do. There's no right answer to many of the questions he poses, which can make him an acquired taste. But he becomes an old friend, and a lot of what we see is reconstructed. Though, because almost nothing of what we know about Socrates comes from him directly, but from his students writing about things he said and did. In philosophy, this is known as the Socratic problem. Odyssey is still as accurate as it can be here, though.
Beauty is short-lived. You may as well use it, Alcibiades.
And to that, I raise my drink.
Charles Dickens, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
One might surmise that the spirits that haunt us are simply our deepest fears, manifested as apparitions.
Dickens is nearing the end of his life when Evie and Jacob Fry meet him, but was still an active participant in the famous Ghost Club, of which he was also a founding member. The Ghost Club's members were notable skeptics, who wanted to prove to the gullible Victorian public that the psychics and spiritualists claiming to commune with the dead were frauds. In Syndicate, Dickens enlists the Fry twins in investigating various instances of alleged hauntings, some of which are suggested to be genuinely supernatural. He was so instrumental in the Ghost Club that, following his death, it was ultimately dissolved, though it has since returned.
Splendid. I have your first case.
Ubisoft puts a lot of time and resources into researching history's most famous characters and assassinations, and this goes a long way into making players feel immersed in the ancient worlds Ubisoft creates. Alright, up next, and finally, we'll be looking at times Ubisoft got history just plain wrong. This means inaccurate portrayals of characters and assassinations that were altered or dramatized to fit the game's narrative.
What did he talk about? His plans for Napoli?
Did you like it?
I can't remember.
Perhaps you will remember this. That puts you in your place.
Welcome to MojoPlays. Today, we're looking at 10 times Assassin's Creed got history wrong. Did you spot any of these anachronisms?
If the people think the royal family has been hoarding food in a time of famine.
Bedlam. Just the sort of thing Germain seems to thrive on.
Thank you, Leonardo. For everything. Anytime. And remember, if you...
Madonna.
Oh, you're good. The ladies must like you.
For this video, we're not looking at times Ubisoft took a lot of artistic license for the sake of the story, but times where the games are directly contradicting historical facts. Monteriggioni, Assassin's Creed 2. The Auditore noble family may be fictional, but the Tuscan town in which they own a large villa certainly isn't. Monteriggioni is a walled commune deep in the heart of Tuscany and is a key tourist attraction in the region. But while adding in the second home of our favorite assassin and his Uncle Mario definitely counts as artistic license, Ubisoft also removed many of Monteriggioni's most famous sites, like its many piazzas and famous churches. It's strange that they would choose to forego the town's landmarks and beautiful architecture, especially when it's so small that it couldn't have been as hard to recreate it accurately. Cesare Borgia and his army also never visited, though plenty of Assassin's Creed fans do today.
So consider this an invitation from my family to yours!
The Medjay, Assassin's Creed Origins.
I am a Medjay. I am a feather in the eagle's wing.
Bayek is a Medjay, an elite and skilled warrior who protects the people of Egypt in the 1st century BC. But there are numerous problems with this premise, primarily that the Medjay no longer existed by the time 49 BC rolled around. References in historical texts to the Medjay, the pharaoh's private police force, and in the 20th dynasty, which finished in the year 1077 BC.
Does Cleopatra still rule?
There is no ruler in Egypt, plunged into the will of various tyrants.
Our queen has abandoned us for Rome.
This is over 1,000 years before Assassin's Creed Origins, and there's absolutely no evidence to suggest that the Medjay persisted for this long. It's not clear why Bayek needed to belong to the Medjay at all, and couldn't have just been a skilled warrior who suffers a great tragedy.
Nothing. I was a Medjay. A husband, a father. I painted half of Egypt with the blood of those who took that from me. All of it over a relic like this one.
Fake famine. Assassin's Creed Unity.
If the people think the royal family has been hoarding food in a time of famine.
Bedlam. Just the sort of thing Germain seems to thrive on.
The Templars and Assassins are intimately involved with history's biggest events, and true to form, much of Unity's plot revolves around the Templars orchestrating the French Revolution. But the Templars this time are the Jacobins, the faction who ruled the First French Republic, and Unity says it was these revolutionaries who engineered the famine-plaguing France to encourage the population to rise up.
Good. And I'm instructed to tell you to make certain one of the bags leaks.
Yes, madame.
It's an incredibly blinkered way to portray history, blaming the revolutionaries for the very real grain shortages that partly caused the revolution, and which happened because of poor harvests rather than a far-reaching conspiracy. Mohawk Allegiance, Assassin's Creed 3.
We've been receiving reports of Allied natives working with the British. I've asked my men to put a stop to it.
A Native American protagonist in a AAA blockbuster is a great moment for representation, but Connor's allegiances don't make much sense to anyone with a cursory knowledge of the American Revolution.
Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes!
Connor spends the game fighting alongside the Patriots, rubbing shoulders with the Founding Fathers. He is eventually shocked to discover the Mohawks support the Loyalists, which was because the British promised that if they won the war, they wouldn't steal the land from the natives. But it doesn't make sense that Connor wouldn't already know this, since he frequently visits his tribe, or that he would align himself with the Patriots in the first place. Leonardo's missing years. Assassin's Creed 2.
Now all that's left is to remove your ring finger.
Really?
I'm sorry, but this is how it must be done. The blade is designed to ensure the commitment of whoever wields it.
One of the most influential artists and inventors in history, it would have been a crime for Ubisoft to head to Renaissance Italy and not include Leonardo da Vinci. but there were plenty of things they chose to omit where he was concerned, specifically what he was doing between 1476 and 1478.
Thank you, Leonardo. For everything. Anytime. And remember, if you...
Ezio first encounters Da Vinci in Florence in 1476, but at the same time, Da Vinci was facing down accusations of homosexuality. This goes completely unmentioned except in a footnote in the in-game codex, which could be easily missed. But a more direct error comes later on, when Leonardo moves to Venice in the 1480s, despite the fact that he lived in Milan at this time.
I don't know. It's only a prototype, an idea. It's not ready yet.
Pirate Code, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
Walk with us, Kenway. There's trouble brewing.
While it's certainly one of the best pirate video games ever made, Black Flag misses out on many key aspects of what a pirate's life was actually like. One thing sadly missing is pirate codes, the rules set out by the pirate captains for their crews that new crewmates would have to agree to.
Yeah. Taken from the holds, just as you said.
A little more than a blowpipe. But they'll do.
These codes of conduct were a major part of piracy, dictating how men would behave, how disputes would be resolved, and how many shares of treasure they were entitled to. We never learn what Jackdaw's code of conduct is, or how Edward really leads his crew, though notorious pirates Blackbeard and Black Bart had detailed codes of their own.
A merry life and a short one, that's my motto. It's all the optimism I can muster.
The Borgias, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
You intend to give me money?
No, I do not.
Then I will use the Peace of Eden to get what I want. Your help is not necessary.
The villainous and violent Cesare Borgia and his corrupt family, Father Rodrigo and his sister Lucretia, may be great video game antagonists, but their portrayal is far from reality. In fact, some scholars have accused Ubisoft of completely buying into the anti-Borgia propaganda that was spread at the time.
No one kneels as low as Lucrezia Borgia! Who put you up to this? Was it your brother or your father? Perhaps a bit of both? Perhaps at the same time?
Chiudi la bocca! None speak ill of the Borgia! The same will happen to any who defy us!
Good people of Roma! Stay strong! You will be free! Your time will come, I swear it!
For instance, the inappropriate relationship between Cesare and Lucretia may well be complete slander, as there's no historical evidence to back this up. In actuality, the Borgias weren't any better or worse than any other noble families, none of which were particularly moral, like the Medici and the Sforza whom Ezio actually aligns himself with.
Madonna.
Oh, you're good. The ladies must like you.
Louis XVI's Trial, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Je meurs innocent. Messieurs, je suis innocent de tout ce dont on m'inculpe. Je souhaite que mon sang puisse cimenter le bonheur des Français.
Upon release, there was a lot of controversy around how Unity handled the French Revolution, one of the most notoriously complex parts of history. But though the nature of the revolution and exactly what it accomplished is still debated by scholars, there are a lot of indisputable facts too, like how many members of the National Convention voted in favor of executing the king.
You control the gold will decide the future.
Unity tells us that there was only one vote in it, and a key Templar cast the deciding ballot. The result was 361 to 360 for the execution. However, in reality, it was 394 to 321 in favor, a decent majority for the convention.
This was the truth de Molay died for. The divine right of kings is nothing but the reflection of sunlight upon gold. And the crown and church are ground to dust. You control the gold will decide the future.
No brothels. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. A few people lauded Syndicate for choosing not to portray fallen women in London slums, but there's a far less accurate city because of it. Though courtesans played an important role in earlier games, Syndicate doesn't have them at all, despite the fact Victorian London was not only full of ladies of the night, but the culture was very concerned about them. Charles Dickens even built Urania Cottage dedicated to rehabilitating these women. And though working girls did finally appear in the Jack the Ripper DLC, his famous victims were rewritten as undercover assassins. The DLC side content was too little too late, and their absence was still sorely felt in the base game.
There's not one person in this filthy borough who'd have defended us as you have, Miss Evie. Thank you.
No Jewish characters. Assassin's Creed series.
I have been ordered to keep your rallies off the streets.
No, you must listen to me. The people in this city are in dire need of your assistance. Oh, you are Jacob Fry, are you not? And Miss Fry?
We're at a disadvantage, sir.
Karl Marx. Much like you, I am an activist of sorts.
To date, the only game that has Jewish characters is Syndicate, and only because those characters are also important historical figures. Karl Marx and Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. Every other game, and still Syndicate to a large extent, omits the Jewish populations of many major cities, like the complete absence of Rome and Venice's Jewish quarters in Ezio's game, and also no Jewish characters in Jerusalem.
I wasn't informed of any new bodyguard. Who's your commanding officer?
Let the boy speak, Dizzy.
Madam, apologies. But we've learned of a threat on your life. And the Met thought it best to move quickly.
Threat? What sort of threat?
That sort. If you excuse me a moment.
In Origins, Alexandria's Jewish district does exist and contains the Greek synagogue, but Bayek still meets no Jewish characters. It's a glaring omission that Ubisoft should hope to rectify in future games.
We seem to have that in common. Auf Wiedersehen, my friends.
Oh, Jack. You were an assassin, yes, but we are not the same. And that is why your memory must be erased for all time.
Welcome to Mojo Plays, and today we're counting down our picks for the historical figures where Ubisoft clearly didn't do enough research.
If you were to meet with an accident, few in France would suffer. My career certainly wouldn't.
Christopher Columbus, Assassin's Creed 2, Discovery.
Oh, I've been waiting for this moment, Luis. Do you feel it? The tide shifting beneath us.
While a lot of people likely missed Assassin's Creed 2 Discovery on the DS, if you did play it, you may have been baffled at the way Christopher Columbus is handled. No longer is he the man who wrought so much suffering in the Americas, but he's a friendly ally of the assassins. He ends up being a target of the Borgias, so Ezio rescues him. But as with many other figures, being against the Borgias doesn't make someone a moral person. Ezio actually ends up helping Columbus put his expedition together, even though the brutality Columbus would perpetrate later in his life is surely against everything the assassins stand for. The same assassins who would go on to try and end the slave trade.
Do not interfere, Ezio. I've had quite enough counseling from your quarter.
Charles Lee, Assassin's Creed 3.
Benjamin Churchwill. He's a finder and a fixer. He's also on your list.
Lee and Washington did disagree extensively about Washington's military choices, though Lee didn't initially have strong objections to Washington becoming commander-in-chief instead. After a chaotic retreat during the Battle of Monmouth, Lee's vendetta against Washington grew, but he did not, as far as anybody knows, join a secret society devoted to destroying Washington and other enemies within the Continental Army. His public disdain of Washington eventually got him dismissed from the army entirely, after which point he stopped his machinations and bred dogs until his death. There was no last-minute chase through a burning ship in Boston, nor was he executed in a pub in Philadelphia.
Yet you fight. You resist. Why?
Because no one else will.
Mary Read, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
Fancy seeing you here, Kenway. Still looking sleek and mean.
It's well known that notorious pirates Anne Bonny and Mary Read did dress as men, with both of them doing so while serving on the ship of Jack Rackham, aka Calico Jack, who also appears in Black Flag. However, not only does Anne Bonny not dress as a man in the game, but Mary Read is disguised as James Kidd, the alleged son of Captain William Kidd. This part of history is not true. Read never pretended to be Kidd's son that we know of. Interestingly, some historical sources suggest that the two weren't trying to disguise themselves as men, but were simply wearing more comfortable men's clothes, though other sources dispute this. We'll likely never know.
No one honest has an easy life, Edward. And it's aching for one that causes the most pain.
Niccolo Machiavelli, Assassin's Creed 2, and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
Ezio, what a surprise to see you here.
I thought you had sent for me.
Would Machiavelli have been an assassin if the assassins were real? Probably not, and for one reason and one reason alone. He was a huge admirer of Cesare Borgia. It's widely believed that his most famous work, The Prince, which explores treachery in political life, is about Cesare. Brotherhood does suggest that Machiavelli can't be trusted, with La Volpe falling for evidence that suggests he's a traitor. Ezio finds out that Machiavelli is innocent and saves his life. Machiavelli also continued to live and work in Florence after the Medicis were finally exiled, which is also in opposition to the games since the Medicis are key allies of the Assassins and the Auditores in particular.
We must not allow him to assemble his remaining supporters. The coming weeks are critical.
The Marquis de Sade, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Now you can charge in there, cause a great disturbance, and send all the rats scurrying back to their holes. Or you can disappear into the swarm and follow the rats back to their king.
The less you know about the crimes the Marquis de Sade were imprisoned for, the better. But among them were the performance of obscene acts using a crucifix and dozens of assaults, ending up arrested or imprisoned half a dozen times. Honno meets Sade early in the game, though he doesn't know it's him, during the storming of the Bastille, but in real life, though Sade was imprisoned there, he'd already been transferred away 10 days previously. It's also hard to believe that despite Sade's political connections, Arno would ever work with him. Sade asks Arno to assassinate a brothel owner who's been mistreating his girls too, which hardly tracks with the crimes he was found guilty of or his philosophies.
To your health, Arno.
Karl Marx, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
We're at a disadvantage, sir.
Karl Marx. Much like you, I am an activist of sorts.
You've got the look of a man who wants something.
Indeed. You've done more for London citizens lately than any endeavor has accomplished in a decade. But those citizens were already well provided for. I challenge you both to help those who really need your assistance, the working people.
Ubisoft is infamous for claiming its complex historical epics are divorced from politics. So, what happens when a company with that kind of ethos decides to put Karl Marx in one of its games? Well, it's bizarre to say the least. Marx appears in a few side missions in Syndicate, some of the glitchiest in the whole game, and talks to the Fries extensively about how he believes the true route to socialism is via democracy, disagreeing with the violent tactics of some of his followers. This isn't exactly accurate though. Marx generally believed that only through revolution could true democracy be achieved. True democracy in this case meant the right to vote for all men at least. So they were planning to revolt to gain the vote, which they still didn't get in Britain until 1918.
Killing people and destroying property solves nothing. Democracy is the only road to socialism.
Cesare Borgia, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
The Pope told me about you and your little group of assassins. And this! Give me the gun his friend fashioned for us. We've had too much bloodshed. I think the cleansing is in order. So consider this an invitation from my family to yours.
All of the Borgias are likely to be very inaccurate since all the negative stories about them come from slanderous accusations made by other Italian nobles who didn't like them. Cesare, though, may be the worst affected. There's no evidence that he and Lucrezia had an incestuous relationship, for instance, and he was also a highly effective military leader. By the end of his life, though, he always wore a leather mask in public, almost certainly to hide the symptoms of syphilis. He also didn't die nobly in battle. He was ambushed, alone, by enemy soldiers, and stabbed to death by spears before being stripped. Ezio would never dishonor an opponent by doing that, though.
How did you find it?
The apple you stole from Mario Auditore, let me hear.
Kill him! Kill the assassin! Tear the maldito bastardo to pieces!
Julius Caesar, Assassin's Creed Origins.
Out, all. You will each be sent for when our congress is concluded. I wish to hear both Ptolemies' side of the story.
By the end of Origins, Caesar has arrived and become a puppet of the Order of the Ancients, essentially doing everything Septimus and Flavius tell him. His death on the Ides of March, orchestrated by assassins including Brutus, is betrayed as a victory for the people. But how accurate is this to Caesar in real life? Well, not very, as in reality, Caesar remained extremely popular in Rome. His military campaigns were brutal and devastating, even by contemporary standards. But in Rome, he enacted populist policies and oversaw many reforms to the Roman Republic that would have helped ordinary people. Because of this, some have argued that it makes more sense in reality for Caesar to be aligned with the assassins, not Brutus.
She will never fall to you or your kind.
Freedom is not given, Caesar. It is taken. Requiescat in pace, Caesar.
Napoleon Bonaparte, Assassin's Creed Unity.
Oh, I'm not here at all. Not officially, anyway. But how often does one find the opportunity to poke about in a king's private study?
Looking for anything in particular?
State secrets, private correspondences, personal treasures, that sort of thing.
I do hope we're not eyeing the same prize.
Name it.
Certain letters written to the king, ripe for misunderstanding, should the wrong men find them.
I see. Well, then perhaps we can help each other. I believe the king has built a hidden vault somewhere in here. If only we could find it.
One of the early contradictions between Napoleon in real life versus in Unity is, as with many of the characters, his accent. Like the rest of the Frenchmen, he speaks with an English accent. In reality, Napoleon was from Corsica, and routinely mocked by the French for his rough way of speaking, until he eventually won them over with his charm. So it would have made more sense to give him a different accent from all other characters. The Dead King's DLC gets stranger though, by having him be a villain with an Apple of Eden. We already knew that he had one thanks to Assassin's Creed 2, but he turns into a monster too soon than reasonably makes sense, since Dead Kings is set in the 1790s.
I wanted him assigned to some out-of-the-way garrison. But the man redefines the term friends in high places. He's untouchable.
But you know where I can find him.
Rumor about the barracks is that he and a unit of his cronies plan on marching on the Grand Châtelet this afternoon. If he were to meet with an accident, few in France would suffer. My career certainly wouldn't.
Well, practice your speech-making.
Jack the Ripper, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Help me. Miss, please, why am I here? No one will tell me. It's Jack! Jack the Ripper, I say! He's the one who abducted us! He starves and tortures us until we write to our families, begging them to do as he dictates, or we'll be slaughtered.
Is he here? Have you seen the Ripper recently?
Not for weeks. But he'll come back. And bring more poor sods to dance on the Walder's called for him.
You could argue that since Jack the Ripper was never caught, it's hard to dispute much of what Syndicate says. But the Jack the Ripper DLC is so beyond the realm of possibility that it's hard to believe that any of it could be accurate. In-game, Jack the Ripper is a former assassin, whose motivation for killing women is that those women were actually assassins themselves. That makes sense as a premise, but what about Jack the Ripper's personal prison he's running in two decaying prison hulks? That's just baffling. As well as that, by 1888, there were no more prison hulks in Britain, left to rot or otherwise. and all the ones in Deptford specifically had sunk or been broken up as early as the 1840s.
Rest in peace now, Jack. You and your twisted acolytes.
So maybe you don't skip history class and just play video games. Let's face it, history isn't always as exciting as we imagine it to be. That being said, these are video games that we play for fun, so taking some creative liberties has helped Assassin's Creed stay fresh and relevant even after all these years. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.